Okay, so now we're taking a look at the FiNe types, which would be the inversion of the previous videos, NE and Fi orientation. Beginning here first with Frida. This is a very generous volunteer, so thank you very much, Frida, for your sample. We're going to first take a brief look at the Vultology and then go into the psychology afterwards.
Okay. For me, love is the source of everything.
Meticulous fingers. We also see the disengaging eyes. And then we see the poised receding. So the tendency for the hands to retreat towards the center line. Oh, notice that here we see this asymmetrical smirk to the side.
It's the source of every expression.
Here again, we see, you're going to see a lot of these wobbling motions in the lips.
Every emotions.
Again.
Every relation.
Another one here. The subtleness of her voice is what I call breathy, or like sprite-like. So she has that sprite-like, breathy voice of Fi.
So it's a very basic concept, I guess. Like
that right there was another sassy shake, and then another lip wobble. So the Fi and the T axes is completely there together. Both sides of it are present. Now to pay attention to the perception axis, we first look at the eyes. Notice how they tend to jitter around. There it is again. So we have the eye movement patterns of NE, but they are embedded within a JI Vultology, and the emotive expression is candid. All right, so we have a good handle of the Vultology now. Let's take a look at what she has to say.
Love is the source of everything.
She says for her, love is the source of everything in life.
It's the source of every expression, every emotions.
It's the source of every expression, every emotion.
Every relationships that you
have, that
everyone have. The source of all of them is just love.
So of every emotion, of every relationship. So the way she's describing it is almost like as a monolithic principle, this monolithic axiom. Love is at the bedrock of everything, emotions, relationships, every part of life, underpinned by this one thing.
How would you define success?
So the question is, how do you define success?
Being a successful person for me is being able to find your purpose in life.
So she defines success as being able to find your purpose in life.
Not just like finding the purpose, but also live for that purpose.
Finding plus living for that purpose.
Doing your own thing for that purpose.
Or doing your own thing for that purpose. So here we're seeing some of that individualism that we saw with the TISCs. I'm going to put that down here. Basically, living according to your own way, finding what that way is, and going according to that way. So that has echoes of what we saw here with James Jean, where he says he likes to do work he's interested in and not fulfill others' expectations.
So you will have a very meaningful life. Okay. Many people just assume that I have an easy life.
So the question was, what's something people don't know about you? And her response was, many people assume that I just have an easy life.
People usually see me as a very, I don't know, but they see me as someone who has a positive vibe.
Seen as having positive vibes and energy.
When they see me like that, somehow they start to think that she will do great in everything, like she won't have any problem.
And then from that they assume that she would do great in everything, that she would not have any problems. But of course that's not the case. So we managed to get a few motifs from there. Let's see what the next sample has to say. This next sample is also a volunteer. So thank you very much to Amy here, who volunteered her video to be added to our database.
And lost. And
we can see the JI Vultology, a very strong momentum halting, very strong slowdown. And you can also see the tension in the mouth running here.
But was too scared.
And then here the asymmetry. Let's go back a little bit.
Needed a
Here, for example.
hug, but was too scared to ask for it.
So we see very similar Vultology to her.
Your own thing.
They could almost be sisters. Now let's focus on the psychology of Amy and see what she says.
Very insecure and very hurt.
I think the question was, what were you like 5 years ago? And she says, very insecure and very hurt
Lost
and lost.
and very cold and fragile.
Very cold and fragile. It's always so warming to hear the honesty of this type. They say things that are very personal, but because they're candid types, they just say them in an unbridled way without necessarily needing to filter too much. But okay, let me write some of this down. Was very hurt, secure, and lost, cold and fragile.
Someone who really needed a hug but was too scared to ask for it.
Too afraid to ask for help or a hug. Now, something you'll notice about these types is that these two individuals are Seelie. So they're FiNe Seelie types, and Seelie, as we said, it's a type that tends to be more socially adaptive, or what you might call people-pleasing. And so this tendency to not assert, to not take for themselves from other people, but instead to be just givers, that is a tendency of the Seelie types and the adaptive types. And it could lead to something like being afraid to ask for help, even though you are very much in need. So we're seeing that in the psychology.
If I knew I was gonna die tomorrow, I think I would...
The eye toggles, you can see. Yeah, very much doing the brushstrokes of any.
I would spend time with the people that I care about the most.
So she'd like to spend time with the people she cares about the most. Which kind of seems like a typical answer, but it's actually not the only answer people give.
Like, because I have people who in my life that I want to say things to, but I'm too scared to say. So I feel like I would want to do that.
Now, I want you to notice something, and that is that when she does these JI momentum halts, she does not lose the emotional affect from her face. She's paused, and yet the tension is in her mouth, and she's in between an emotion. You can tell that the affect is not leaving.
Because I'm gonna die anyway, so might as well.
And that's what I call a giddy giggle. FI users tend to have this unbridled radiation of emotion, and that leads to their giggles being very unordinary and kind of peculiar.
And I think after all of that, I just want to hang out and spend some time with the boy I like.
And would like to spend time with what she likes. Okay, so what do we see here? If she's to spend her last day somehow, she wants to spend it with the people that she personally cares most about. There's this habit of speaking more intimately about oneself rather than more remotely, as we saw with the TISE. Okay, now for the third sample, this is once again also a volunteer. This is Tori. Thank you so much, Tori. So first, the Vultology. She has the arms retreating towards the torso and the center. A little bit of body swaying, but it stays rigid. The mouth having the 4-point pulling. Yeah. A little bit of the buoyancy coming from NE. And now pay attention to the eyes here. Moving around. Okay, so we can see the FI and we can see the NE, we can see the JI lead. Now let's take a look at what she has to say. So she's not speaking English, but fortunately she added subtitles to her video. So thank you very much for that. My personality, the question is, I find it really hard to describe myself. But I'd say I'm shy. That I'm a curious person. Okay, let's start writing some of this down. Difficulty in describing personality tends to be a shy person, curious person, competitive. I don't like crowded places very much. Not a lot of noise. I prefer silence, being quiet in my little corner. This likes crowded spaces, likes solitary spaces and little corners. I don't know what else I could say about me. She likes music. She likes TV shows. Likes looking at the internet, looking at random things. Interests, music, TV shows, internet. Do you know when you open your Wikipedia page and then you open another page and then you keep going and going, you end up somewhere completely different? Right. So that's a specific thing. Let's say Wikipedia, rabbit holes. Yeah, and I think part of that is the revisor energy. I like watching movies. She likes talking to the interviewer. She likes reading. So interest reading. On this one I'm going to add the TV shows, I'm going to add movies. So she's afraid of failing in everything she does. Or like, you know, never being good enough for something. Okay, so fear of failing at everything she does.
Algo que eu for fazer, eu nunca consegui chegar num standard.
Never getting to a standard that she has for herself, like a kind of perfectionism. Okay, so never living up to a self-made standard, a perfectionism, right? That's the same thing we saw with the other JI leads, the TISCs. They tended to hold themselves to very high standards of mastery, competence. Okay, that's a good amount of information there. So the next one here we have is Selena, who is also a volunteer. So thank you very much, Selena, for contributing your video. So, okay, look at the eye toggles. Very, very prominent.
Yeah, I'm very...
And the rigid posture of JI. Here, for example, on this side, you can see the wobbling. And then over here, going upwards, the asymmetry.
The way that I experience the world is everything to me.
Okay, so that has dismissive head shakes are very TE sassy. Let's go back here.
The world is...
See that? The way she rattles her head and the dismissive gestures. Okay, so let's take a look at what she has to say.
Something most people don't know about you. Most people don't know shit about me. Yeah, I'm very misunderstood.
Okay, she says most people don't know her and that she's misunderstood.
But that's okay. I don't know if I would have it be any other way, because I find it very interesting. The way that I experience the world is everything to me. It's probably the most enjoyable experience is just being myself.
So her subjective experience of the world is the most valuable thing for her.
And all the thoughts that are in my head, and my experience of reality is so complex and vivid.
Subjective experience of reality is complex and vivid.
And I could be sitting in a room totally alone and silent and be having these like crazy revelations.
Generating revelations in complete silence in a room. Being in complete silence in the room reminds me of Tori saying that she likes solitary spaces and little corners.
See, it's also difficult to answer because I don't...
You see the wobbling here.
I have to love everything about myself. If it's something that I don't like about myself, then I'll change it. And if I can't change it, then I learn to like it. So I like everything about myself that I can't change.
So she must love everything about herself that cannot be changed.
Oh, that's an interesting question, because I could imagine myself being anything.
I guess that one was if you could change career to something else. And her answer is that she could see herself being anything. So she could see herself being anything career-wise.
I also think career in itself is like not important. Like you're who you are. So many other things make up your life. Your career is like one element that can define and shape it and the direction that you go into, but it doesn't, it's not everything.
So she says that career is not important. What matters is who you are. Okay, so wow, that's quite a lot there. Well, we see a lot here that focuses on the subjective experience of the world being highly valued, her individual internal complexity being of deep personal significance to her. That's similar to what we saw in Amy's answers, where she said that she would spend her time with people that she cares about the most. First of all, there's this awareness of the things that matter to them, and then there's this holding on or emphasizing that which matters to them individually. And here with Frida, we see, for example, that success is defined by being able to find your purpose in life and living according to that purpose. It's a very strong parody to Selena saying that what matters is not the career, what matters is who you are. So different language, but saying very much the same message, which are an elevation of one's personal values, an identification of what matters to you as a person, as well as having a focus on perfectionism, as all the JI leads tend to have. This one, you guessed it, is another volunteer. And so thank you also, Melinda, for contributing your video.
Oh, wow. My favorite thing to do kinda, I guess, depends on...
Rigid posture. Her voice is a little less breathy and it's more nasally, which is the other side of the oscillation. Notice here the nasal labial tension, and then down here there's the pulling of the two at the bottom.
Overall, I would say...
Saw that movement over here? Asymmetrical mouth here. The eye toggling, notice here.
I just really...
Okay, so let's take a look at the psychology now.
Oh, wow. My favorite thing to do kinda, I guess, depends on my mood. Overall, I would say creating artwork.
Favorite thing to do is creating artwork.
It's very relaxing for me to do. Kind of therapeutic. I like to spend time alone.
Art is relaxing, therapeutic. You like to spend time alone.
I don't know, it's fun. I enjoy it. I love the challenge of trying to learn new skills and I'm really good at it, and I like to see, I like having something to show for my time. And
Likes to have something to show for her time.
well, honestly, I don't want to be famous.
The question was, what would you like to be famous for?
I like to be like blend into the background.
Okay, don't want to be famous, want to blend into the background. Now, I want to stop right there. Why do you think that we haven't seen very many celebrities here on this list? All of these samples are, in fact, volunteers. You know why? Because I've looked in the celebrity sphere, and standard development FINEs are very rare. They're almost non-existent. Not because they don't exist, but because I think what it is this particular type doesn't like to be in the spotlight. So the only way we get samples of them is in the rare moments when they volunteer to come out of hiding and do something like interact with the website and ask for a visual analysis, as they have with us. So that's one of the only ways we catch them, and you see this reflected in the Motif Matrix. So for example, Melinda just comes out and says that she doesn't want to be famous, she wants to be in the background. Selena says that she can generate revelations in complete silence in a room, showing that she likes to be alone in a room. Tori likes solitary spaces and little corners, and she tends to be a shy person. So in multiple of these samples, you have a similar motif of not wanting to be in the spotlight, not wanting to be seen, preferring to be alone, preferring to be in solitude, doing the craft or the thing that they find most enjoyable. So there's this kind of contentment with one's own autonomous self. But okay, coming back around, let's continue a little more.
Either for my artwork or maybe for something I've written, something, I guess maybe writing something that, because I do like to write too, writing something that would contribute to society, probably about mental illness and stuff, and something that would be helpful to other people.
So interests are writing and wanting to help other people, specifically regarding mental illnesses.
Like contribute something that would make a difference, making a difference, I guess, that or my artwork, you know. I'm a very personal, very private person, so the whole thought of being famous just like...
Right, very private person. Okay, next let's look at Sarah, who is, you guessed it, another volunteer. Thank you, Sarah, so much. Oh, immediately, right, so you see these eye toggles. Very characteristic, any eye toggles, almost textbook. Going all over the place, very scattered. But meanwhile, the body is rigid and staying in its own spot. The head is not wobbling around with the eyes. It's just the eyes moving. That speaks to J-lead, J-eye lead, and any auxiliary.
Like, if somebody knows I like somebody, that's something I find very embarrassing.
Embarrassed that people finding out who I like?
Like being found out of my intentions, or...
Okay, let's edit that. Embarrassed by being found out in intentions. Basically having the veil of privacy revealed. Somebody exposes you. Once again, very private person being embarrassed of being found out.
Called out in public. I think it's like I think a lot of things is...
Dislikes being called out in public.
Like every mistake is embarrassing, I think. But...
Oh, right. Making mistakes. Yeah, similar to what we saw up here in Tori with the fear of failing being mistakes.
I think that like as a child I always thought that, well, we need to see that every child is actually coping, like that it would be some form of emotional intelligence, like something like therapy or...
She'd like to see that every child is given some form of emotional support, yeah, as like a default in society.
Something very similar to life knowledge.
That would be great, yeah, totally agree.
How are we supposed to cope or live if you're broken? Like, to ensure that in the education system. But
so the brokenness part, let's see, ensure survival if one is emotionally broken. That has some parity with what we saw here in Melinda saying that she would like to help people specifically regarding mental illness. There's generally a lot of compassion in these samples, a lot of wanting to help, spread love, spread kindness. Now, as far as the males go, I only have one standard development sample that I can show, and that would be Tada here.
5 years back. Well, I think I was
eye toggling,
an
any
awkward person, I guess. 5 years back.
Disengaging eyes, rigid posture,
I'm very
meticulous
proud
hands.
of what I did.
And here you see this snarling tension.
My medical school 3 years ago, and those times was quite harsh.
Medical school was quite harsh.
Yeah, it's been hard for me to kind of get used to
Exerted
new
pushes.
information every day, and it's still hard as of now. But I'm very proud of what I did. I just want a life that is worthwhile.
I want a life that is worthwhile.
My first initial thought was maybe China, because I really like Chinese cultures, and you know.
I think the question was, where would you like to live?
And like Chinese romance movies are quite interesting. Yeah. But that being said, I don't think I never enjoyed any place more than this very house that I'm living now. This is the perfect place to live. I'm quite a nostalgic person, so
home is perfect place to live is a nostalgic person.
there's nothing like home. I can't express how much I'm addicted to this very house. There is no place on earth that can make me feel this way.
Okay, and that's Tada. Okay, going back up here to the female samples. Here we have a 4-way split screen showing the qualia of some of the samples that we saw.
Being found out all my intentions.
Very similar.
Someone who really needed a hug.
They're all very emotionally affected, but very subtle, soft, but radiant. It's kind of whispery radiation.
But was too scared to ask
Those
for it.
are worst things.
If I knew I was gonna die tomorrow, I think I would.
Yeah.
Every mistake is embarrassing.
That's the qualia of the FiNe type. So keep that in mind and make a mental note of it. This is what they look like. All right, and that completes the FiNe types. Now we've completed all of the delta types and all of the beta types. That is 8 of the 16 types completely quantified. And I hope that the case is being presented and is building in your mind from all these samples of what the model is trying to say. So at the start of this lecture series, I presented you with the end conclusions of what it means to be J, what it means to be P, and so on and so forth. But now I'm actually giving you the data from which those conclusions were arrived. So you can look at the data yourself and see whether or not that matches the final outcome. In a way, I'm giving you like the raw information for you to synthesize out the conclusion yourself, because I want other people to be able to replicate this as well. Because I believe transparency and reproducibility is what we need in the psychology community. So thank you so much for everybody who's been supporting me in this journey. And that concludes this video. But in the next videos to come, we're going to be looking at the remaining 8 types to get a sense of what all the 16 types look like. So until then, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you later.